we jump into our keynote, though, I have two particular things I want to talk about, and I'll just let you kind of soak that in for a moment. One thing is, if you did not see Trish Yule's introduction 2 Fridays ago to getting a strategy put together and figuring out how to go through this, we're going to do some check-ins, right? And we'd like for you to check in. How are you doing? Take a minute right now, turn to the person next to you, and just check in. Are you getting what you wanted out of this? Has your target changed? Are you finding something else? Go.
What's up, everybody? So I'll be on stage in about 2 minutes or so. So going through the intro right now. What's up, Kristen Cardos? What's up, Jessica? What's up, Mike? Thank you guys for jumping in. But yeah, we're gonna get started here in a minute. But you can see the cool graphic jumping in. So yeah, here's the graphic on the piece. But excited to be here. And the guy introducing, the guy right there on stage right now, is actually my old boss. So kind of cool little story. Yes, I have a hat on today. I went hat. But yeah, thank you guys for sharing it. Thank you for broadcasting it out. But yeah, it'll be an hour keynote, and then a half-hour break, and then an hour panel. So you guys are going to get 2 full hours of me today. So hopefully you guys enjoy. So my no hat. Actually, I didn't have a hat. If you look at my most recent Periscope, the keynote that I gave in Miami last week, I had no hat. Oh yeah, no hat on the slide. I know. That's actually kind of true. But yes, thank you, Kristen, for sharing the Facebook as well. Thank you guys so much. But yeah, you actually see me probably with less of wearing a hat in 2017. But for right now, the hat is me. It's where I'm most comfortable. So thank you guys for sharing. We're going to get started on stage. It's a twist on my keynote, so you guys will hear some new stuff focused around training, because this convention is the Training and Learning Development Conference. So check it out. Looking forward to it.
20 seconds, wrap it up.
Oh yeah, look at my awesome Snapchat filter.
Let's have a quick sharing moment. Who wants to share with everybody where they're at and do a quick check-in?
Look at that.
Who's going to volunteer?
Pretty awesome.
If nobody volunteers, I have to run out
and then this is my other filter.
Pick someone.
So those are the 2 filters we have today.
All right, thank you. I can count on you, Gene. Thank you so much. Yeah. Where are you at? And what you wanted to come away from the event with?
I wanted to meet awesome people, and I got to meet some new awesome people that I didn't already know, including a student studying e-learning who is going to be a rock star. So get to know this one.
Awesome. Yeah, getting to know everybody here is the best part. That we have, a collection of fantastic people. I know you have probably sat next to probably some of the brightest people with the greatest experiences in e-learning and learning and development, and you guys have probably chatted just on the surface, right? And just like, where are you from? Where have you worked? What do you do? I want you today to dig a little deeper into those relationships, because what you're going to find is that each one of these folks has interesting backgrounds that go a lot further than learning and development. Interesting things that actually apply to learning and development, but you might not think so. So one of my favorite examples is my good friend Mark Ehlert, who's working on his slides for today still, I can tell. Either that or checking Facebook. But so he started off in anthropology. And anthropology, I think, is an amazing, amazing field that actually lends a lot to what we do. And there's a lot behind that. Ajay Bengakar, who just stepped out, he started out as an accountant of all things, and he is still an accountant, but he does the whole learning thing too. So everybody comes to the table from a different perspective and has very different experiences, but yet we all deal with training and learning and development. So dig a little deeper today, find out those little interesting nuggets. There's always something that you as a as an individual, don't really feel like it's all that cool. I let one little thing about myself squeak out yesterday, and Luis said, well, I'll bet that's something people don't really know about you. I am a certified mixologist. Wow. I have the paper certificate for it and everything. Although if you asked me to mix you a drink, I probably couldn't do it. This was a long time ago in a previous life. But yeah, I mean, it was one of the earliest forms of hands-on simulated training that I experienced. They actually built a bar that wasn't a bar. They used colored water and empty liquor bottles, and we just practiced, right? Repetition, over and over and over again. Learn the recipes, mix them, learn how to spin the bottles and all that kind of fun stuff, and be really fancy about it. But that was just one of those early things, and I don't often refer back to it, but every now and then I think, you know what, that's real. That's real learning. That's hands-on. That's simulation. That's all of these things that we talk about. How fun would it be to learn how to do that in virtual reality? You know, that would be a really interesting thing. So very, very cool stuff. So engage with everybody. Go a little bit deeper today. Since you have that opportunity to, please do so. We have a slight shift in the program with my friend Christy Conlon. She came prepared for 2 sessions, and I totally messed up on the program and put the wrong one on the thing. But both of them were awesome, and I wanted her to do both, but we're still going to be able to pull that off. But so what she's going to do in her session that is currently marked on the program as competencies. She's still going to talk about that, but we're going to talk about that at a lunch table and make it a conversational lunch group. What she's going to be talking about in her session is the growth lens on learning. So talking about a growth mindset and how that impacts learning and what we do. Did I do a good job of that?
You nailed it.
All right, cool. So yeah, so I would highly encourage you to engage with Christy and check out her session. By the way, who I've known for a very long time. Thank you again for coming. All of my Intel colleagues and friends from a long time ago. It's one of the greatest parts of my career, actually, that I always look back fondly on. So anyways, so good. I got those 2 things out of the way that I totally thought I was going to forget. And I did the birthday, and anything else? I'm really informal about this stuff, so I'll give you all an opportunity. Is there an announcement anybody would like to make? No. Good. All right. So I nailed it. Yes, thank you. Thank you. And yeah, this I know. So I just wanted to make sure that my head was clear before I started talking about my friend Brian Fanzo, who will be speaking to you very shortly. I Google searched images, as I do for all of my presenters and keynotes, and there's a whole bunch of them out there because Brian is quite the social influencer and all over the place, and I thought maybe I could just put them all up there and just run through them really fast, and everybody could kind of get a taste for what Brian's like. But I just have to do the quick introductory story about Brian. I met in my previous job just before becoming the Chief Learning Officer at Litmus. I started a training organization at a data center, and Brian was one of the first people that I hired. And this is something I talk about all the time, is that I think some of the best training professionals and some of the best learning professionals never have a background in this, don't come from an academic background. There's just something special about certain people that you just know, they're going to be able to take the ball and run with it, and whatever gets tossed in front of them, they're going to be able to take it and handle it. And Brian was one of those guys, like times 1,000. I only had to think something, and before I knew it, it was bigger than life, and it was a huge successful project. So, but there was always this one nagging thing about Brian, and that was that he was so interested in the social media stuff, and it wasn't really a nagging thing. It was just this realization in my mind that, you know what, there's bigger and better and greater things for Brian than what we can offer him in training, and we have to figure that out. I remember in the early days when I first hired him and we were all talking social media, I had already had a pretty decent Twitter following. I think I had like maybe 3,000 or 4,000, and I remember Brian was in the cubicle right next to me, and I remember him saying, "How did you get so many Twitter followers? You know, dang, that's awesome. You know, wow." And now today, if you look at him on Twitter, what are we at, Brian? 80,000?
80,000.
80,000 Twitter followers, so I've been eclipsed. But it's a good thing in a good way. So I love this quote. Together as a social community, we can drive change, but we have to be authentic and practice what we preach. Everything about this event is practicing what we preach, and being social and being authentic is changing everything we do. Like I mentioned yesterday, the technology, all of the work that we do, there's so many changes, and everything we do is about change. Learning is about change. You know, we're trying to change performance. We're trying to change attitudes. We're trying to change cultures. And there are other industries outside of us. We aren't just in our own little silo. There's other marketing industries. There is social influencing. There's digital media. All of these folks that when I see them doing the work that they do, I look at it and I'm like, that's also what we do. In a different way, with different purposes, with different goals, but it's very, very, very similar, and we can learn so much from these folks. And so I have been actually looking for an excuse to have Brian talk to all of my peers and colleagues for quite some time now. So it was fantastic to have him here. His tagline is a favorite of mine, think like a fan. How many of you have raging fans of your training base, your audience? The people you train, are they raging fans of yours? They love you, they love the training you create? Yeah, Trisha's got them. Yeah, oh yeah, Matt, you definitely have them. People love the stuff you guys do. But I don't think everybody does. And I think that's something that we can look towards. I think the happiness conversation that we had with Allison is a big part of that. Something we can do to influence change, to become more impactful, apply business value. And I think one of these other spaces is using social media to help people think like a fan. And so we're all set with the slides. I think I got the thumbs up. He's good to go. But before I announce Brian and have him actually jump up on stage, I actually asked a bunch of his friends to help me introduce him. And so I'm not sure how we play it.
Let's go one more and I think it'll start.
All right.
Fanzo is about to speak to y'all.
I'm so excited for you because you're about to get a passionate and informative talk from my friend and mentor, the amazing Brian Fanzo.
Oh my gosh, I am so jealous.
Based on the size of his social presence, I would have been certain that Brian Fanzo is 6'6", 250. A giant on social media, maybe not so big on stage, but I tell you what, when it comes to learning about how to use technology and tools to build communities and relationships, this guy gets it.
I'm so excited for you guys, and after you see his presentation, you will be able to stop from talking fast and tweeting even faster.
If you're ready to think like a fan, then you're listening to the right guy.
This is a guy who totally gets return on relationship. A connector, an engager, but at the heart of it all, a dad. This dad won't quit, no let up, baby.
Brian Fanzo is one of my faves, and not just because he is a great dude, but because that comes through his social presence. He knows how to authentically build communities that will be raving fans of yours and ambassadors for life. He knows how to utilize all the latest technology, and he will share it with you in a way that's easy to understand. He is my friend, he's an incredible dude, and he's an even more amazing speaker. So get ready and have fun, and I'm jealous. I wish I could be there. Have fun, Fanzo!
So without further ado, the man that talks fast and tweets even faster, ladies and gentlemen, Brian Fanzo.
Do you have a clicker?
I do.
Thank you. All right, so that's the best intro I've got ever. I had no idea that happened, so thank you, Brian. So I got a little bit emotional there watching that kind of stuff going on. So my name's Brian Fanzo. And like Brent said, Brent actually hired me in 2012. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the training mindset today and really what I believe is part of the success of what I've had. I'm going to walk a little bit into who I am, my background. Like Brent said, the stage there, having a unique background and kind of having a passion for what you do seems to be a trend, especially in this room, especially in this community. And I'm going to cover that. I'm going to talk a little bit about training mindset. You'll notice I have a slight obsession with Bitmojis. So that one that like you're going to see those on almost all the slides because it's one of those things that for whatever reason they got one that looks just like me, and it was I didn't have to pay for that to get done. It was done by the team over at Snapchat. But if you look real quick on the screen, this is actually the tweet I sent the night before I started working for Brent. Excited to start my new job on Monday, but it's a big change after 7 years working from home. E-learning designer at IO Datacenters. So my background prior to this was I worked 9 years for the Department of Defense in cybersecurity. Yeah, as exciting as it sounds, right? My job was trying to help the different military branches collaborate and share cybersecurity policies. So getting the Army to share with the Navy, Air Force to share with the Marine Corps. So anytime you guys are thinking that your job is tough and you can't get people to work together, just put that in your mindset. And this was 2004 to about 2012 when I left there and I decided I had a dream job and I had a great opportunity. I had 30 employees that worked for me, actually 32 employees. We ran 4 training courses a week around the world, 45 weeks a year. And I did that for about 4 years. We did 18 weeks overseas. Every U.S. military base in the world, my course was actually there and deployed to. It was a 4-day training course that we deployed 25 laptops to 25 active duty Marine Corps or active duty military, and we went through training on cybersecurity tools. And most of these entry level or even some of the active duty people that were in my class, they were put into this course, which I would say is like a 301, 401 cybersecurity class, because they were told or they put on their entry papers in the military that they knew iTunes, or that they are a fan of Facebook. And I was giving them a tool, and really we were training them on a cybersecurity solution that could take down a network that controlled the drones over Iraq. We giving them tools that controlled every single laptop and machine on the high side and the low side of the military networks. And I was training these guys, and women and men, on using these solutions. It was an amazing experience. I can tell you one of my favorite training experiences of all time was an entry-level 19-year-old Army young man named Brad, and Brad and I are still LinkedIn friends, and this was 2005, so power of social that we've stayed connected all these years. But it was his first week in Iraq, when I was in Iraq, and we were training, and he was sitting in the front, he was taking all these notes, and after the very first break, he came up to me and said, "I need help. I don't even know the acronyms that you were using." And I was like, "We haven't started with the cyber acronyms. Those are military acronyms." And he said he was enlisted, he went to camp, and he actually got deployed overseas the very first week. He hadn't even checked into his military location in the U.S. And so he said he doesn't know anything about cyber. He's the guy that told me about, he put iTunes on his solution. And for me, this was amazing, because not only was it his first week in country, it was his first week eating mess hall food in Iraq. And I can tell you, they call it you have a 10-day bowel cycle before your stomach gets used to the food that is served over there. And then, not to mention, he also was in charge of supplying the overnight trucks. So he would average about an hour and a half of sleep. And he took notes all day. We actually had a second trainer that was with us that sat next to him. He ended up doing jumping jacks in the back of the class every single day to stay awake. And because he was so tired, he was so enthusiastic. And he did pass the test at the end of the week, but it wasn't because he didn't try hard. It wasn't because he didn't know it. But I think he was so overwhelmed and so intense. We had to stay the weekend. We were training another week the following week. So we decided to kind of train him over that weekend. And I can tell you, it was probably one of the coolest experiences to see someone that just wanted to learn and wanted to do good at what he did. He wasn't passionate about being in the Army. He was barely in the Army. But he was passionate about being successful. And that's something that I've taken with me every single day. My parents raised me, they said, "Ryan, you're not great at school." That's a given. You get in trouble more times because you don't know how to shut up. You don't know how to stop talking. You love people, but you're kind of figuring out what you want to do in your career. But the one thing that I always knew was that the best way for me to stand out was to be myself. to be authentic. And I can tell you, when Brent hired me, and the reason I have these pictures up there is, data center community is about as sexy as you can picture the data center community being. Not sexy at all. The good news was that bar was really low for us when we were doing a lot of our stuff. That they were like, "Ooh, you guys are using the new version of PowerPoint." Like that's exciting. When I went to one of the events, actually the tagline "Talk Fast, Tweet Faster" was actually given to me at a Gartner conference, and it was because they were like, "Man, you do tweet really fast." And I said, "There's 3 people using the hashtag. Like, I don't tweet that fast. I'm just one of 3 people that happen to be using Twitter at this event." And so Brent kind of embraced who I was. He allowed me to not only do what I do, but you can see there I'm at a global conference. I'm standing on a giant podium above everybody else, demonstrating an interactive 3D data center operating solution that we trained all of the clients and customers that Brent and I worked on. And it was a really cool solution. We got to work with partners. We went to Wells Fargo, Bank of America, and we really got to help transition this entire company. I was actually hired, and it's kind of cool. We got jerseys with our hiring number on our jersey, and I was employee 256, which if you're a tech guy, it's kind of 256 is kind of a very cool thing. And when I left less than 2 years later, Brent actually left a couple months before I did, we had just hit 614 employees in less than 2 years. And so what we were in charge of, what we were really part of our job was, is to figure out how to get a culture to change, figure out how to change as our company was going from a data center company to a cloud computing company. We were also trying to figure out what this software was that we were reinventing on the fly. And also we were figuring out kind of where it all worked. Not to mention I was figuring out what I was passionate about. And Brent not only supported me, but I moved around. I had a lot of passion for social media. I've never had a marketing job. And that was something that I took kind of pride in because I don't think like a marketer, I think like a fan. I think like someone that's a customer, a client in the community. And Brent allowed me to kind of find other different opportunities within the company. I ended up having a direct report into the CEO. I got a dotted line to the CIO and the CMO there. And really my job was to facilitate collaboration. My dream job growing up, and really what I really wanted to do, is I wanted to model 2 people that were really important to me in the tech space. One was Guy Kawasaki, who of course created the culture that is Apple. And the second one was Robert Scoble, who did a very similar thing at Microsoft. He then went to Rackspace, which at the time was our competitor at IO. And he was a technology evangelist. And technology evangelist to me just sounded cool. It didn't sound as geeky, as dorky as like my computer science or even my e-learning designer, no offense. And really I wanted to find a way to, really what I was passionate about. And by doing that at this company, and this was the last job I had before becoming an entrepreneur that I am now, I realized quickly that as Brent kind of allowed me to grow and explore, I realized it wasn't technology that I loved. I thought growing up that, I loved computers. My favorite thing was to jailbreak iPhones. And my TI-81 calculator was the very first thing I ever hacked. I still have a TI-81, and when I talk to millennials, they have no idea what that is. I'm a pager-wearing millennial, which means I am barely a millennial. I'm 35 years old, and if you look at the cusp, I squeak in as a millennial by about 6 months. So at my last event, they made me stand up there and take a picture because they're like, this is what a millennial looks like. But for me, what Brent allowed me to do is, and really what IO allowed me to do was to explore what I was passionate about. Because I would leave those locations. I remember Brent and actually I were together. We were with Keith, one of our other cohorts, and we were leaving Bank of America, and we had just done this giant training course for giant Bank of America. We had 2 senior VPs in there, and the guy walked up to me, put his arm around me, and he's like, "Brian, you're a fraud." And I was like, okay, I'm not sure where this is going to go. And he said, "You said you're a technology evangelist, but all you did was try to help us fix people problems and rip out more of the technology than install." Because they had lots of silos and lots of things. They were using technology to solve people problems. And it was right about that time that I realized technology wasn't what I was passionate about. Really what I was passionate about was helping people embrace change, helping people understand the power of telling their own story and being themselves. And so I did decide to go on my own and left IO Datacenters. So the last guy, I hope, when I retire, the last person to ever hire me will be Brent, which will be a very cool story that we will have to document in my book for sure. But I wanted to give a little background and kind of a brag board of who I am, just to set the stage, because I'm going to talk to you guys about digital storytelling. I'm going to talk to you about personal branding. The phrase personal branding gives me the creeps. So it does for everybody in here. Don't worry, we're all the same. I feel like, I'm going to build a brand. I had to put on a facade. I have to do all of these. Oh, it just seems creepy. But for me, a major shift in my career, a major shift in my life, happened in the fall of 2013 when I was still working at IO Datacenters. And I realized that I wanted to do bigger things. I left the government, I left the job I had, not because I didn't love it. I absolutely loved it. I loved enterprise life. I loved startup life at IO Datacenters. You can ask anybody that worked with me. So the day I walked out of that building, I was the face of the company. I was passionate. I loved coming into work every single day. But really for me, I wanted to change, and I wanted to make big change. And I was really excited about that. But I realized that to make big change, you first have to make small incremental change. And you have to make small changes across the board. And one of the things for me was social media was really hard. It took a lot of work because I'm not great with grammar. And if you've read any of my stuff, I'm sure you can point that out. I wasn't great at really figuring out how to convey that all of my passion, all the things in 140 characters or on a blog post. But one of the things I did figure out was I was like, you know what? I'm just going to start being myself because that's why Brent hired me. That's why I have these jobs. This is why I'm being successful. And I will tell you, when you hear people tell you to be yourself, they forget the part that sucks about that, right? The part that all of a sudden you lose clients. I lost my very first client when I decided to explain to people about being proud of being diagnosed ADHD. And it's something that changed my life when I got diagnosed at 31 years old. The fact that I am very passionate about my daughters and I have tattoos on me, those things were things that, from a business side, some people were alienated by. And you lose those clients and you start to question, is being myself actually a good idea? But I can tell you, you'll hear the things like, failure, you can pick yourself up, and being yourself allows you to work with the people that you actually are meant to work with. I'm living proof of that. I'm living proof of it today, that for the longest time, I wear a backwards hat. You can ask Brent. He knew me long before I was iSocial Fans, which is my brand today, that I wore a hat every day. I wore crazy colored shoes. I bleed Pittsburgh sports. I drive a Jeep. I love my daughters. I'm proud to be a dad. And for me, that's who I am. And when I started conveying that message on social media, it got a lot easier. Social media became fun. And to this day, my favorite compliment in the world is when someone comes up to me after I come off stage, and I'll be speaking at 45 events this year in 10 countries. And when someone comes up to me and says, Brian, you are the exact same person online as you are offline. Because I don't look at it as online, offline. And as you can see, the things that I've been very lucky to be successful with since 2013, including working and launching a lot of social media accounts for all of these brands. Really what that fuel for me was not only figuring out what I was passionate about, but figuring out who I was, what I love to talk about. And I think for you in this room, you're here in this room because you believe in what you're doing. You understand the power in training. But I also think you struggle with, what the hell do I post online? And nobody cares about what I tweet about. Like, why would someone care about what I eat for breakfast? We don't, just as a warning. But times have changed. More so than anything else, times have changed. Even when I started working with Brent over at IO Datacenters, social media for me was still kind of a disconnected arena. And we were still figuring out, Facebook and Twitter and where LinkedIn fit in and Instagram and all of these different tools. But today, it's drastically changed, and mainly because of two different things, in my opinion. We now have a culture that doesn't look at social media as a broadcasting and communication channel. It's just social media. It's what exists. It's not something you have to live in marketing to do. And the second one, it has to do with I don't even have my phone on me. See it? Is our phone, is our mobile device. And our mobile devices, in my opinion, is the greatest game changer. Because before, I remember my dad worked at a peanut brittle company. He owned a company in Norfolk, Virginia. And I went into his office one day, I believe I was 12 or 13, and he got to show off a fax machine. And I was like, this is cool. This is, I remember I'm a pager-marrying millennial, so I know what fax machines are. And I remember being really excited about seeing that because the coolest technology, the coolest inventions, where true innovation was happening was in the workplace. You went to work, that's where all the latest, greatest technology was. When I got my first BlackBerry, it was issued to me from the Department of Defense. I was one of the very first 500 people in the United States to have a global BlackBerry from Verizon because I traveled so much overseas that they gave it to the Department of Defense. Department of Defense gave it to me. I have got all of that thanks to work. Well, today, Brent was asking his daughter to FaceTime from her classroom. The mobile device has transformed not only how we engage, what we do, but it's empowered us to have no excuse not to tell our story. No excuse not to embrace who we are. And I think that's where I'm going to focus this kind of conversation on. And it starts with some shifts. And I talked about I love teaching change. And how many people here love change? All right, good. We're going to be in a good environment. I can tell you. Yeah, we got a half hand? You're in. You're in. I like it. So you hear a lot about, especially in the marketing side, I do a lot of conferences around marketing. You hear lots of people talking about work-life balance and personal persona versus a professional persona. But when you talk to customers, you talk to your clients, you talk to the people that are in your training classes, they don't give a crap about any of that. What they care about is its life. Digital, offline, online, all of that together is just who they are. It's how they communicate. It's what they do. And so I think one of these shifts for us, we have to realize it's not about putting on a professional persona online, maybe on LinkedIn, just because that's kind of where LinkedIn is the unsocial network for social media, where you you really only remember LinkedIn is there when you're looking for a job, or you're looking to hire somebody, and you're like, oh yeah, they changed this thing a lot in the 2 years since I've been on there. And then you're like, wow, I got a lot of these in-mail messages, and everybody's just spamming me and sending me their sales pitch, because apparently they forgot that when you meet somebody in a bar, you don't throw your business card and walk away. But online, apparently that's cool in LinkedIn, right? You just get those annoying LinkedIn messages. It's like, thanks for friending me. By the way, here's my bio. Here's the things you should buy from me. And I say, thanks for unfriending you now. But when you think about this change in mindset, it really does come down to this is my favorite slide. It's in every presentation about what I give, is the biggest two changes are these two things you see on the stage. Perfection is a fairy tale. And I'm curious, I do this a lot, I do this at every event. How many people here know of a brand that is perfect? How many people here can think of a thought leader or a person or a coworker or a boss that is perfect? So why are we requiring ourselves and holding ourselves to the standard of creating perfect content, of creating a perfect training course, of creating a perfect solution? If we don't believe perfection is obtainable, we don't believe anybody is perfect. For the longest time, we've created this bar, we've created this barrier that said we need to be perfect. Well, stop. I'm giving you permission to stop focusing on perfection. Because perfection, I believe, is the actual roadblock for done and the actual roadblock for doing great things. Because the rate of change today is crazy. If you think about it, my dad, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where I was born, he had one of those giant camcorders over his shoulder, and every Christmas he made us wait at the top of the stairs, and he ran to the bottom, and he's like, I'm going to take a video of you guys coming down. I don't think we've ever watched one of them, but we did. My brothers and I did those. Well, that camcorder, that VHS recorder was around for 21 years as the staple, the true staple. Apparently, I'm talking too much with my hands. Sorry about that. The true staple in really video recording. It was 21 years. The Blu-ray DVD did not last 4 years as the staple. The rate of change today, not only in technology, but in culture. Think about it, the iPhone, like Malia said yesterday, has not been out that long, 9 years ago. And in 9 years, it's transformed our lives. I own 5 phones. Who owns 5 phones? It's not like that shouldn't even be possible. I do a lot of live streaming. I do a lot of things where that is a requirement. But the interesting thing about this whole conversation and where perfection kind of falls in line with this change is we have to realize that when you're conveying your message, when you are trying to be perfect, you actually do more harm than good. Because you're not authentic. You're not relating with the people. How many people have gone to a website and on their culture page, or on their, and maybe you guys have created it, so no offense before I get there, but you go on there and it's like, hey, this is my site about culture and why you should work for my company. And it's a canned video with a script, with like a background that's like kind of fake, like, oh, this is our work environment. And you have someone that says up there, it might even say underneath, this is an actor, not an employee, because you've created too many employee videos, the employee leaves, and you have to stop creating it. And you say, trust us, we are authentic. Look at this really bad scripted video with someone that's an actor. Like, yes, right? We've all seen that, right? That was the life we lived. That was the world we were, because online and digital and technology were pushing us so far away from the human condition, away from who we are, that it was no excuse. No wonder there was catfishing and all of these things happening online. But guess what? In 2015, 2016, that is changing, and we're coming back to realizing that we buy and we work with people that we actually like. We connect and we have a good time with people that we like. We go online not to follow a brand or not to connect with a logo. We go online to connect with more people. My passion, the thing that wakes me up every single morning that I'm more excited about than anything else, is I love connecting great people with great people to do great things. That's what I'm excited about. That's why I tweet, that's why I share, that's why I do videos, because if I can connect great people with great people to do great things, then I believe we can make those small changes, and we can start knocking down that barrier of perfection. The second slide one there is control is an illusion. And this is kind of scary for a lot of people, because they want to control their message. They want to control their story. They want to control their reputation. The amount of brand leaders, the amount of executives that I've worked with that tell me, Brian, I can't control what's online, so I've decided not to go online, not to have a presence. So that's great. What you've done is you've given us control to tell the narrative of who you are. There is nothing worse than letting your friends, your enemies, and everyone else tell your own story. And if you're saying that I'm controlling the message by not doing, I'm going to tell you this right now. Showing that you don't care online is way worse than conveying that you don't know what you're doing. And I like to say I don't care is way worse than I don't know. Because saying I don't know online is actually one of the most powerful things that you can do. I'm going to walk through how I do that, even how I'm getting brands to create something called an I don't know page. Because guess what? Who here wakes up in the morning and says, what's my favorite brand posted on social media? 0 hands. Because we don't relate to a logo. We don't care what a brand's posted. The greatest asset of every company and every brand and every business is their employees. And the idea of telling their story and getting those messages out is how we stop worrying about controlling the message. And I like to say we create swim lanes. And what swim lanes are, rather than thinking about control. And I worked in cybersecurity for the Department of Defense. I had the highest civilian clearance you can get. So I do see some heads nodding there, but they're thinking, this is what you guys are thinking. This is great, Brian, but it doesn't work in my industry. This is great, but it doesn't work for me. And I can tell you, regulation, security, if you're in healthcare, if you're in education, all of those things are telling you why it doesn't work. It's because you want control. And you want a crutch. You want an excuse to not do. And that, amen. See, I like it. And for me, that excuse goes away. And to start this off, my Think Like a Fan philosophy, and no, I did not change my last name to embrace this mantra. I guess kind of the other way around. My Think Like a Fan philosophy comes down to a simple thing that we are all craving when it comes to a brand, when it comes to your business, when it comes to the university you're working for, when it comes to what you're doing. We want access. We want access to people. We want access to places. We want access to experiences. Because online, the 3D, the virtual reality stuff that Malia was talking about earlier, the things that are super exciting, especially in the training environment, I can't tell you how excited I am to see what virtual reality does and how we're able to embrace that. But really, what are we doing? We're giving them access to things they can't get anywhere else in the world. I went to Australia for the first time 3 weeks ago, but I'd walked the streets of Australia and been to the beach a couple hundred times. Because on live streaming and Periscope, some of the best live streaming Periscopers are from Australia. And I've walked those beaches. I've seen the border crossings in Africa. I had been to Dubai before, but I had never been to spots of Dubai that I was taken to this year thanks to social media, thanks to technology, thanks to live video. I was given access to things that I couldn't get anywhere else. So throughout this rest of this time as we're talking, think about access. Because some people will say, Brian, the space I work in, I don't have fans. Yes, you do. Because I had someone that's a plumber. And I walked through a strategy for building out fans of plumbing. And this wasn't people that liked the, your butt crack sticking out above your jeans. That wasn't those kind of fans. But it was fans of people that were on call and people that were really responsive. And the reason that people write reviews and are inspired to do all of these great things is because they're a fan, they're an advocate. And the reason, if you think about it, when you first hear the word fan, we go to sports for a reason. Whenever the Steelers won this Sunday night, for a change, I didn't say the Steelers won when I was talking about it. I said, we won. We won. Now, I don't play for the team. I've never got a paycheck from the Pittsburgh Steelers. Not yet, right? Maybe one day they can bring me on. But for me, it's that advocacy. It's that connection. It's that relation. It's because we have access. We believe, like I bleed those colors. My logo and everything is black and gold for a reason. It's because that's who I am. And when you're able to connect with people, it doesn't matter if they're your customers, it doesn't matter if they're the people you're training, it don't matter if you're your partners or maybe even your competition. But when you're able to give them access into who you are, you're taking down that barrier or that excuse or really what that blocks for how you can relate with them and do what you do offline. Now, I'm writing a book, or just about finishing a book, and the book will come out next year, but this is the first chapter. And the first chapter is simply community is the future of business. I solely believe this, that it's not about building a following online. It's not about having a lot of followers on one channel. I'm very thankful to have 80,000 followers on my Twitter account. I have a little less than 250,000 followers in social as a whole. But for me, that following does not matter. I want to build a community that follows me where I go. Because technology, social media, life, virtual reality, all of these things are going to change. It's going to change where we go. It's going to change where we shift people. Even when we change email addresses or websites, how do we direct people? But when you build a community, and here's the difference between a community and a network, and I like to just kind of clarify this for everybody out there. Both of them are important, but they're both different. When you're building a network, think of Facebook as a network. Facebook, you are building your following on Facebook by inviting people. It's a people-to-people relationship, or you get that wonderful Facebook pop-up that says, these are people you might know, because they have 3 mutual friends of you, because they're someone inviting you. A network is built by people inviting people to come together. A community is built around people coming together around a shared passion and a common purpose. And so that passion and purpose is what builds and brings people together around a community. And the difference being, when someone leaves a network, when the home of that network goes away, the network disappears. In the community, when someone leaves, when the home of that community disappears, the community is still bonded, not by the person or the place, but the common passion and the common purpose. It's why I love Twitter. Twitter is my favorite social network, and so many people ask me why. You don't have to know me. You don't have to like me. We're streaming here on Periscope. I see lots of streaming going on. People can find my Periscope broadcast today if they happen to type in the words training mindset in Twitter. And they hit search. My Periscope comes up. They can click on that and they can discover who I am. That is a community around a common phrase, a common purpose. I've ran 3 Twitter chat shows. I've run different podcasts. And it's because I like bringing people together around a community. But the scary part about community and the scary part about social media is, I'm sure you all are hearing it as well, is, do I need to be on Snapchat? What's Instagram? Like, how do I reach my audience? All these new things, they get overwhelming. The last thing you want is another damn tool. Like, stop inventing new social media, right? And my job, and I suffer from FOMO. If you guys are familiar with FOMO, it's the fear of missing out. It's not diagnosable, it's not treatable today unless someone takes all your devices away, and then they're going to have really big trouble with me. But what I believe in is we have to stop focusing on just what the new is and thinking that we have to be there. We have to shift our focus and say, where is our community currently at today? And then we have to listen and understand what the value is and where they're going tomorrow. Most brands, I love Snapchat. I have 2 Snapchat filters right now going. If you guys are in the audience here and have Snapchat, if you swipe left, you'll see one that's called Screenshot Awesomeness and one that has the logo here for this event. And for me, Snapchat's amazing. It's a raw access. I give people more information on Snapchat than I do anywhere else in the world. I've cried on there. I've explained my business losses. I've talked about my entrepreneur journey. My kids get on there. For me, it's a very raw, intimate experience on Snapchat. But for the majority of brands that I work with that don't have a strong presence somewhere else, I don't recommend them to get on Snapchat. But I do tell them what the advantages are, the audience and the types of people that are there. Because rather than focusing on being on there, why don't we understand why people are there and the value that they find? And I think that's one of the things that really steps us to this next direction. And when people are talking about, hey, what do I share on social media? Where do I convey my message? Because you guys are all passionate about what you're doing. I heard all the dialogue in the hallways yesterday. I heard everybody really excited to be here. To me, that's exciting, right? We love it. But guess what? When we're on social or we're in digital, and we just tell people what we do, nobody cares. Nobody cares what you do. We care why you do what you do. We care what has fueled you to do what you do. We care about how it's going to impact us. And I think the greatest mistake people make when they look at social and telling their digital story is they think about focusing only on what they do. I'm an e-learning designer. I create courses. Why? What's the impact? How many people's lives have you changed? Give me a success story. That's the stuff we care about. We don't care about what you do. Just like we don't even care about what technology exists. And so if you frame this conversation, okay, I don't need to be perfect. I don't need to control the message. I don't need to talk about what I do. I just need to talk about why it's important and how it can impact you. Like, this is easy. Like, this is the stuff I like to do. Why do when you go to a conference, and it pains me a little bit, as a speaker, a professional speaker this is my livelihood, everybody when they go to a conference, they say, what's the favorite thing you did? The networking in the hallways, the happy hour where I met random new people, the yoga outside. It's not the people on stage. So why, when we're thinking about this entire conversation, do you only talk about what you do with all those people and all those different conversations? They find out who you are, why you do what you do. I could not believe yesterday how many people said they love their job in here. That's exciting. Holy crap. You know how many other conferences I go to that people do not love their job? It's like every conference. And loving what you do, it's hard to convey that by only talking about the what. And so I'm asking you to start thinking about the why, the how. Start focusing on things that talk about, my favorite example is celebrate your customers. If you're not sure what to share on social media or even on video, go interview somebody that you had an impact on. Go talk to them and let them explain your story. Because we don't go to Pizza Hut or to the fish and chips place and ask the fish and chips place if they have the best fish and chips in town. I'll tell you right around the marina, it says in big letters, we have the best fish and chips in town. They're lying. But we don't go to them. We go to Yelp. We go to reviews. We ask people that live in this area. Why? Because we don't trust a brand or the person that tell us what they do and why they're great. We trust recommendations of others, and we trust our community. And we have to start thinking about that when you start conveying your message online. The other piece of this, as a technology evangelist and someone that loves technology, I always thought, man, technology is so exciting. And I start talking about the new devices, and everyone's eyes gloss over. Or Malia, I thought, did an amazing job yesterday. I talk a lot about virtual reality and where live video fits in there. And it's really hard to simplify that conversation. But when you start talking about the experience it enables, that's when everybody started running down. When she started talking about, hey, this is how a sports team's doing it. Hey, this is how doctors in the medical field are doing it. And it was because we don't care about the technology. We don't get the new iPhone just because we need another iPhone. We've been, Steve Jobs already tricked us like 3 times to get a new iPhone like every month, every year. But we get a new iPhone. The reason the iPhone only was in the commercial one time, the iPhone 7, is because nobody cares about the iPhone. We care about what it's going to allow us to do, the pictures it's going to allow us to take. I have the new 7 Plus. If you guys have seen my Instagram page, I took a sunset picture last night down here by the water. It's my best picture I've ever taken in my entire life when it comes to a sunset, and I've traveled the world. And it was taken by that device. And as soon as I took it, I said, this is why I got the device. Not because it has 2 cameras, not because it has, it's faster. It's because it's allowing me to capture an experience in a moment better than the previous version. And I think when we look at technology, we look at virtual reality, it's scary as hell. But it's scary because we're looking at the technology, not the experience it's enabling. So I know you might be thinking, okay, Brian, starting to get the drift here. I'm starting to understand where training comes into it. I'm going to walk you through some of the training mindset elements for me and why I'm successful. But one of the hardest things to do right now is how do you stand out from the noise? It is so noisy. If you think about it, my grandfather in Pittsburgh always told me, grandson, sit down and watch the baseball game with me. And he would say, remember, we don't even have a remote control. I only have 3 channels. And I have to get up and turn the dial, and because I have to get up, that means really only have 1 channel per day. And so his way of consuming information, his way of understanding how bad our Pittsburgh Pirates were, which is all my memories of my grandfather, was he had 1 channel of information. On our phone alone, we have 40 channels of notifications. When you go onto a website, even when you go onto Google or you go onto Twitter, the amount of information overload that we have today is crazy. And it's exciting, but it's also crazy because it's no longer about 1 channel. It's not even about how many, DirecTV, you buy 643 channels and you realize that you use 13 of them. But if you want to downgrade your package, it costs you like forever amount of money. You're like, okay, I guess I'll keep all 600 channels for whatever reason. But all of that information, all of these opportunities to gain information, to me, this is where the learning and training mindset comes. Because when I'm creating content, when I'm trying to stand out from the noise, there's 2 things that I always focus on. The first one is I focus on being myself, conveying my message. I am not a thought leader. I am not an influencer in the space of everything, but I can tell you, I can focus and share what I do, how I do it, and what I learn. Because I don't need to know everything. People want to know what you know. They want to know the experience that you know. And I'm a big Gary Vaynerchuk fan, if those of you that know Gary Vaynerchuk. And Gary has had a profound impact on my business, my life, a lot of things that I do. But I can tell you, I disagree with him more than I agree with him. Because what I was able to do was study what he was great at. study, and actually live video is probably one of the reasons that I realized that I'm not a great blogger. And when I have to write a blog, I create about 30 excuses to not write it, and then I wait till the night before it's due, and then I have to cram it through and send it over to the editor. I didn't love blogging. Podcasting was amazing. But for me, I love sharing what I'm doing. Being on stage since 2004 is something that I love doing, and video became my home for telling my story. And for me, there's no barriers. I can fire up a video. If you guys look on Twitter, I was on the balcony this morning, and I did a welcome video for the event. And I just did that by grabbing my phone and saying, hey, I'm going to tell everybody how excited I am to be here. And for me, it's finding your home, figuring out what you do best. I'm not going to tell you that you have to do video. I will tell you that 81% of the internet by 2020 will be video. But if video is not the greatest thing for you, figure out what you're great at telling your story. Because if you want to stand out from the noise, the first thing you have to do is be yourself. The second thing you need to do is you have to create content. And you have to tell your story. And so many times we put those barriers in front of us. And we focus on, okay, I need to be a blogger. I need to be great on video. And all those things, if we're forcing ourselves out of our comfort zone, it allows us to create more excuses. I have a saying in live video that all perfect live streams suck, because perfection on live video is impossible. Therefore, if you're seeking perfection, you're going to use every excuse in the book. The lighting's not right. I have a conference call in an hour. If I really get going on this one video, that my first time, because I'm going to do it for an hour apparently, I'm going to run into, okay, I can't do it this time. Oh, my hair's not perfect today. Oh, the backdrop might not be exactly what I want to see. All of these things that we build into our excuses, it prevents us from actually doing. And so when we think about it, perfection's a fairy tale. We know that control is an illusion. And the power is in being ourselves. We don't need to focus on that perfect live stream. We don't need to focus on exactly what everyone else wants. We need to focus on telling ourselves and telling our story. Now, transparency is something I believe in and I live. And Brent can attest to this. Early on, whenever I started working there, lots of times Brent would go, "You're sharing that on social media?" Or, like, "Wow, that's very open. Like, why did you do that?" And so for me, transparency was my ability to kind of open the door and share what I'm about. But I don't believe everybody has to be transparent at the same level. When I work with brands and leaders about personal branding and telling their story, we do a lot about risk versus reward. What are you willing to share? What's the reward you can possibly get out of it? And what's the risk you're willing to kind of expose yourself to? Because transparency does not guarantee trust. And I think that's a mistake out there across the board. Transparency gives people a window into building trust at scale, at faster, and understanding who you are. But transparency and oversharing are not the same thing. I talked about nobody cares about what you have for breakfast, because we don't. But transparency in the sense of sharing everything you have for breakfast is not the same as giving people a window into who you are, the good times and the bad. On my Snapchat, I talk about all the things that I share, very vulnerable. But I also talk about all the great things that I'm doing. And behind the scenes, I did it while we're walking here through the pool area. And it's like, life is good. I get to walk by a pool and then go get on a stage and do what I love. Because for me, transparency is letting that people get one step closer to who I am. Because Mark Zuckerberg, I believe what he's doing on Facebook and what their goal is he wants to take down every possible barrier that is Facebook is different than who we are. Now let's face it, what we post on Facebook more times than not is like the grass is green type stuff, like who we wish we are, what we want to brag to our friends about. But I think video is one of those ones where it's going to let people in. And so if you can think of it this way, your vulnerabilities, the things that scare you, more likely than not, it's going to scare everybody else as well. And by you sharing them, by you telling your story and what things you're scared about, you'll be amazed at the authenticity of the community you can build around it. My community drastically grew when I started sharing the things that I was scared about. When I talk about being diagnosed ADHD. For me, those are things that like, hey, it's who I am. I remember someone telling me that they had to hide and wanted to change they wanted to get a fake ID to say that they were born in 1980 because they didn't want to be labeled a millennial. And I was like, what? I love being a millennial. I love who I am. And he was like, no, I'm like cast in this like weird thing where like I get trophies for everything I do and I'm entitled. But remember, who gave these trophies to millennials? Baby boomers and Gen X. I know, it's usually But for me, this was something that it had such a big impact on me. I went home that day, I wrote an entire blog post about how much I loved being a millennial and how it was the greatest thing for me. And I thought, wow, this is something I own. But when he shared that vulnerability, it allowed me to understand, hey, there is something I can share. Why do I love it? Why am I okay putting it out there? Why is my book called A Millennial Mindset? Because I think it's one of those things where we assume that other people want something that they don't have, but they just want to relate to you. They want to understand who you are. They want to trust you. And when we're looking at all this noise in the social space, I think one of the things for me that is super important is you have to understand that to stand out from the noise, you almost get more value going back to the basics than you do going out and doing these crazy new things. Being found online, if someone goes to your LinkedIn page, someone Googles your name, someone finds you on Twitter, if your message and your story isn't consistent, isn't the same, if you're not explaining who you are, if you haven't updated 90% of your digital footprint, how can someone figure out who you are and connect with you and hopefully maybe build that relationship if it's a disconnect, if you're not consistent? Because to stand out of the noise, truly, consistency matters. And so I use something called upcycling of content. And what I do is I create a live video and I talk about a topic. And then I take that video back and I write a blog about it. And then I realized the thing that people related the most was the 5 tips that I gave in that blog. So then I create an infographic for the 5 tips that I gave. And then after I do those 5 tips that I gave on there, I decided to do an Ask Me Anything about those 5 things on Snapchat. Now this might sound crazy, but all I did was create one piece of content and turn it into multiple pieces of content. Multiple ways for me to tell my story. And I went to where the audience is. One of the biggest changes that you guys are going to see is that truly, when you're being yourself, the old way of doing it was I have a website, I have a social presence, everyone will come to me. Well, guess what? That's changed. Everybody, every business, we want you to come to us, have a conversation in our channel, in our way. Brent could easily taken the video this morning for his daughter's birthday, and happy birthday to his daughter. Could have easily taken that in video form and sent that via video and an email. More likely than not, his 15-year-old daughter would have checked email like on Sunday, right? Because email is not her preferred way of communicating. But because we understand how they like to communicate, we understand where people are having these conversations, we have to communicate with them in that form if we actually want to stand out and we actually want to create that engagement. Now, being yourself is hard, and there is a problem. If you suck offline, you're going to suck online. Yes. So if you suck, don't be yourself online. But for everybody else, be yourself. Because it's empowering, it's exciting. And we're reaching this area, and this is where the training mindset comes in. I love training. Like I said, we did 40 classes, we did 4 classes a week, 40 weeks a year for 4 years for the DoD. Brent and I did a lot of classes in the data center space. Really what I love about training is I love the fact that I can impact someone else's lives. I know when they leave a session with me, they have an actionable takeaway to make their lives better, that they're going to actually go do something. Sadly, in the social space and even in the speaker space for a long time, it was about broadcasting and telling you all what you suck at and making you feel bad and realizing, like, I wish I was as smart as that person that was on stage, or I wish I was as smart as that person that's online. Now it's no longer about that. It's how can I help them? How can I convict? How can I build trust? How can someone remember me? They're not going to remember me because I told them they're wrong. They're going to remember me because I improved their day. Maybe it's something as simple as someone posting on Twitter and saying, Brian, I can't even figure out where I upload a Twitter video. Well, my job isn't Twitter videos. My job isn't even Twitter. My job has nothing to do with that. But the fact that I can reach out and help them, and I made them a little bit more productive. I made their lives a little bit better. That's going to create that start of that conversation. And this new wave is something that I've coined, and I believe I've coined it. If someone, I might say that I coined it at every event until someone tells me I haven't coined it, but I call it participatory content. And what participatory content is because we realize that nobody's perfect, we can't control the message. Most of us, when we create our content, and I bet you it's the same thing in e-learning, and it's the same thing in learning for a lot of you, we go back into a dark room, or we go into and we brainstorm all on the wall, everything in the world that our community, our customer, our clients need. And then we come out and we train it for the first time and we go, wow, we got that wrong. Like, nobody cared about that chapter, and wow. Because we didn't ask the people we're serving. Right? How crazy is it? It's like probably the easiest thing in the world, yet it's something that we kind of forgot, especially especially in this area where we're at now, because the barrier, right? The barrier between me and you, the barrier between what we're doing has got so distant online that we forgot that they're humans. And if you ask somebody, hey, I want to create something that's more powerful for you, that helps you more, how many people say no? Zero. Because people want to know. People want you to help them. People want to be served better, right? So when we think about it, participatory content is the ability for me to share my thoughts, give my opinion, share my insights, train them on something, but then allow them to help shape the message. Allow them to help shape the direction of the content. I can't tell you how many times I've got on live video, and I'm like, hey guys, I'm here for you guys. I'm going to talk about the 5 things I love about Twitter. And I welcome myself on the video, and I talk about those 5 things. These are the 5 things I like. And then the questions start rolling in, and every person's like, well, who do you think Twitter's going to get bought by? I'm like, I don't know. I don't work for Twitter. Well, what are your thoughts? Who would you wish to get bought by? The old way of creating content was I got on there to tell them the 5 things that I love about Twitter. Shut up. Like, listen to me. The new way is, oh, you guys care about this? Let me share my thoughts. And all of a sudden, I'm reacting, I'm participating, I'm allowing them to help shape the direction of content. Because last time I checked, I'm doing those live videos, I'm creating this content, not for me. I'm creating this for them. I'm creating this to answer their questions. I love it when and I'm sure everybody here has heard it. Man, I've created this video, it's amazing. It was a viral video, but it only got shared 3 times. Something that we have to remember, the value of our content, the value of our story, how people understand what we're talking about is good, it is not determined by us, the creator. It is determined by your audience. Your viral video might have been viral in your own head, but it only is going viral when your audience determines that it was so great that I had to share it with everybody. And this is a difference in mindset, because if your audience is who determines if it's good, and your audience, let's face it, especially millennials, aren't afraid to tell you what they want, I'm perfect living proof, then why don't we start asking them? Why don't we start creating content? I helped launch IBM, SAP, and Dell's very first live video on their Twitter account through Periscope. And one of the things that to me was probably one of the most powerful elements is that one of these brands, and it wasn't one of those 3, but one of the other brands that we were launching a piece of content for, it was in January of this year. And we did 5 live videos over 5 days. And we had a couple thousand people show up. And we had, I think, a little over 1,200 comments and questions during this live video. And afterwards, they came back and they said, Brian, this was amazing. This was just as easy as you told me it was going to be. And they said, we want to tell you something. We've decided, we spent all of November and all of December creating our content calendar for the year. All the content that we wanted to create that we wanted everybody to know. And one of those questions that was asked, we were actually answering in our content calendar. So what we decided to do is we're throwing out the entire content calendar, and we are going to build content around all of those questions that were asked. Because if one person was asking it, there's a good chance more than one. And we figured out that a lot of the content we were creating, nobody was asking or caring. So for me, this is that idea of participatory content. And the reason that this might be weird or might be like, why did I think of that? Henry Ford, when he was inventing the car, he said if he would have asked people what they wanted, they said, I want faster horses. Because they didn't know what they wanted. Steve Jobs said if he would have previewed the iPhone before the iPhone came out, people would have walked out of the stage, he would have had nobody in that room because they didn't know what they want. Well, I can say thanks to the iPhone, thanks to the innovations we've had over time, we now have the resources, the data, the information, and the damn microphone, thanks to social media, to not only share what we want, but convey that and understand what everybody else wants. One of my biggest things when I talk to marketers, I say, if you don't know what your customers or your clients want, you're not willing to look. Because people are posting it in blogs, in forums, they're posting it on Twitter, they're sharing their thoughts about what they want. You just have to be willing to look. And the scary part is, you probably have to be willing to hear what you don't want to hear. I can tell you that was a big case for me, because for the longest time, I really was scared because I talk really fast, and I move with my hands. I have that Italian blood where my hands are going everywhere. And I had a sticky note on every one of my presentations that said, slow down. Like literally, slow down, Brian, you're talking too fast. But when I started slowing down, I started becoming more robotic. I said, how do you guys like this? Everybody's complaint was, Brian, we don't feel like you're being yourself. You're not able to share your passion. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm giving you guys what you wanted. Like I'm slowing you down. I'm being like everybody else. I'm not being who I was. And that was feedback that kind of hurt me, because I tell you what, I spent a long time trying to figure out ways to control my body language and slow down my speech. And I was like, damn, I wasted a lot of time. But now I embrace it, now it's part of who I am. And so when I talk about social media as a whole, one of the biggest things for me is defining what success is. Nobody should go online, nobody should create a social media calendar, nobody should do anything in social media without having some kind of success in mind. Your success might be just finding new friends, might be trying this out, might be, like, hey, sharing a story about myself that I never was able to share, and even though I only have 8 followers on Twitter, maybe this is my first step putting it out there. But you have to have success in mind, because not only do we not look forward to a brand on social media, but social media is just another way of communicating. And if you don't have success, then why the hell are you doing it? Because Beyonce might be working on giving us more than 24 hours in a day, but at this moment, we're stuck with 24 hours. And you have to prioritize those 24 hours. For me, social media, the reason I love it, the reason I've tweeted 148,000 times out of that one Twitter account, and the reason that it's my favorite thing to do when I have a pocket of time, is because I find value. Success for me is building relationships and exploding my community, so that when I do drop my book in 6 months, when I tell people, hey, I need your help promoting and share this, they don't even have to wait for me to ask, they're going to do it without me asking. And that's where I thought defining success. When I work with brands, I often say, hey, are we doing word of mouth marketing? Are we just sharing what we're doing? Are we trying to convey thought leadership? If you're an expert in your field, if you are doing great things, how can people discover what you're doing unless you start telling it? One of the things for me that I talk about all the time is you have to be your own biggest cheerleader. And in social media, that kind of gets weird, because then you're like, all I'm doing is bragging? Like, no one wants to hear you brag. Remember, when you're posting online and you're sharing your story, don't tell them what you did that was successful. Tell them how you did it and why you did it, and you end up getting an award. You voted the best e-learning designer in your state. Well, that's great you put that, but then say, hey, this is what I did. I studied. I learned from all these people, because guess what? You take us on your journey to what you became successful with. That's a training mindset, right? We all know how that's training. That's how it works in training. For me, the reason I became really successful in this space is because every time I got an award or every time I got something, I not only credited my community, because my community is what makes me successful, but I documented, I shared it. You know how many people would tell me, Brian, you just gave out your exact recipes for everybody else to do what you're doing in live video. I said, hell yeah, I have. I hope everybody does it, because I believe we all can raise that bar. We can all do better things. And I don't believe anybody's in competition to me, because there's only one Brian Fanzo. I don't need to be anybody else. I'm going to listen and learn from everybody, but I know that I don't need to be anybody else. I'm going to talk a little bit about video and where video plays. That stat right there, 81% of internet traffic by 2020 will be video. So for all of you that hate video, you're going to have to figure it out. And video, remember, it does not say 81% of internet traffic will be good video. I'm going to guess 6% of that 81% to be good. Because when you go to YouTube, you look for how to do it, take videos. You go to Facebook, who knows what's going on there, cat pictures and videos. And now you have Facebook Live, so people have decided to stream, like, I don't know, cleaning their floor, because we decided, like, we can't mop ourselves. We want to watch you do that in our Facebook feed. But your digital eyeballs, in my view, in my opinion, are the greatest way to share who you are and to create that authenticity and that bond. Because why is it that when someone shakes your hand, why is it that when you meet someone offline, that the connection is so raw and real? It's because they can feel it. They can look you in the eyes and know that you're authentic, that you're talking about what you know. And I think for us, for so long, the disconnection online was because we couldn't figure out how to convey that without them looking in our eyes. We couldn't figure out how to convey that without them knowing who we are and what we are about. Well, now we need to start changing that. We need to start telling that story. We need to start putting ourselves out there. And so I have something that I call screenshot awesomeness. And if you are using that Snapchat filter, I have one of the filters that actually says screenshot awesomeness, and it's a picture of you to screenshot. But I actually started implementing this a year before I started working for Brent, and we implemented it at our company. And screenshot awesomeness not only has to do with your computer, but thanks to our phones, we can screenshot awesomeness. Change is hard. In an industry like we're in right now, training, learning, and development, we are trying to take it from the dark ages into where we're going, virtual reality, right? It's kind of scary when we're like, dude, we can't even get them to give us our own subs website on our own website, and now you want me to tell them to put in virtual reality? You crazy? Like, I can't get my people to invest in learning, and they think training is a one-time event still. Like, they haven't realized you have to train, and training has to be something that's ingrained in your culture. And that change is really scary. And we're going to have lots of great successes, but we're also going to have failures. And those failures suck. I'm not one here to tell you that failures is easy, and failure is always a learning opportunity. Well, guess what? Failure sucks a lot of the time. But when you're able to understand that what you're doing, you're passionate about, because failure doesn't scare me, because I know I will never settle for failure. And I will always remember what I do that is good, and what I do that's great, that's had an impact. And so I call this screenshot awesomeness. So every time you get someone that comments to you about something great you did online, or maybe you get a feedback form from one of your training courses, and it says, best course ever. Or actually, the opening keynote, I can't remember who someone was sitting back there, and they said every time they come see the keynote speaker, she changes their lives. Who was that? There you go. I love that. And you know what? I hope she looks at that video and she screenshots it. Because her motivation for that brand new keynote up here, when she hears someone tell you, you've changed my life every time I'm on stage, those days when you go up there, and I was in Copenhagen, Denmark, and I can tell you they don't really give you any nonverbal cues when you're on stage. And I did, thank you, I'm Brian Fanzo, and I was like, oh God, this is... And then I had a line of 400 people that were telling me how good it was, because it's not in their culture. But that moment when you're on stage and you're like, man, these people don't like me. You have to pull on those kind of comments. You have to go to your portfolio of awesomeness and say, I am doing great things. There are good things that are happening. And just because this sucked, or just because I failed at this point, doesn't mean I need to quit. Doesn't mean that I'm doing everything wrong. And so I have a folder on my desktop that's called Screenshot Awesomeness. Every tweet that I get that someone says, Brian, I can't wait to be on stage. You've impacted my business. I screenshot it. I put it in that folder. And you know what? When someone comes to me and says, Brian, what's the ROI of all that social media you're doing? I can send them that folder. I can tell them all those things to do. And so for me, Screenshot Awesomeness includes in real life. When you're with somebody, taking a selfie with someone, for me, I take a selfie with someone, I love putting it into an Evernote and saying, this person talked about how I impacted their baking business in Maryland. I'm a tech guy that lives in social media, that's passionate about computer science, worked in cybersecurity at a data center, and I impacted someone's life in a bakery in Maryland. To me, that's something that I want to hold on to for those days that I can't relate to a technology person, or someone tells me, oh, you're all fluff, you're full of crap, stop feeding us that stuff that you can't even implement yourself. So screenshot awesomeness, and where this comes down to is, telling your story is scary, putting yourself out there is scary, but ultimately, when you screenshot those wins, when you document the journey along the way, those failures, those roadblocks, those scary moments, they're a hell of a lot less scary when you're able to pull on those things, when you're able to go into that portfolio of awesomeness. And I can tell you one of the biggest things that I've learned is this slide here, that across this whole idea of change, is I believe actually when I left IO and Brent, I wanted to change the world. And I think we can all relate with that. We have that kind of passion. I realized quickly that changing the world cannot be done by any one person, any one movement, any one industry, any one gadget, any one virtual reality. To drive incremental change, to actually change the world, we all have to make change part of our lives. Because I believe if we each are able to do a little bit of change and help make a greater good, then together we change the world. When I look at things like cancer, and I look at things like hunger, I'm on the board for No Kid Hungry here in the United States, trying to rid the United States of childhood hunger, with so many kids going to school without an opportunity to even get free food. One of the things for me that's so powerful with that is we're partnered with 30 brands, 500 chefs around the world. No Kid Hungry only asks for donations one day a year. Their whole change and movement is trying to empower everybody to understand the story, everybody to understand the cause. And then together we each help a little bit, and we make that broad change. So when I left the government to go work for a data center company because I wanted to make a bigger impact in the government was super slow and behind the times to implement anything. I went to the data center company. I was so excited. I loved what we were doing. We were driving massive change. We hired 400 employees over 2 years for us to do that. But then I started to look at it and realized, okay, I want to go put something bigger. But it was amazing for me, and I have a phrase, and I say, we are greater than me. And one of the chapters in my book is also the future of innovation is collaboration. Because I believe that you're coming together right now, and that's the reason when Brent told me what his mantra was for this, and Luis, what you guys are pulling together. It's about coming together to make the industry better, make each other better. We're not coming together to have people scream and tell us what we're doing wrong. If we're all doing it wrong, let's come together and do something better. Let's come together and make change. Because we've all tried it, right? Especially in this industry. We've been trying to get people to embrace it. We've been trying for them to realize that just because you do training for onboarding of new employees does not mean you have a training plan. Right? I live it there. Yes. That's what it's about. And for me, when we start to look at that, we're like, and one of my biggest failures, and it actually happened when we were at IO, is I was driving change. I was so excited. I got the CEO to buy in. Our CEO loved what we were doing. And I went to all the employees, and we were like, man, we got all the employees pumped up. And we were doing this cross-collaboration, a dotted line between every group and every department. We were going to share out this tool called Jive, and everyone was going to collaborate. And I launched it, and we were all excited, and nobody was using it. I'm like, what the hell's going on? I got CEO buy-in. I got all the new employees doing it. And then I realized I missed a group, middle management. And they said, why am I going to let my employees collaborate when I don't make any benefit of it? I'm not getting incentivized. My bonus is not bigger for having my sales guy stop cold calling people because it's not working, but I'm going to keep making him do it because for whatever reason that's still working. I'm not going to have him go post on Twitter or collaborate because nothing's in it for me. Well, I tried to break that for about 3 more months, and then I realized, okay, let's go back to the drawing board. Let's try to incentivize everyone and focus on everyone embracing this change, and then ultimately we'll make that change and we'll do bigger things. So I'm going to leave you with this, and this is the last part of this presentation for me, is that if this overwhelms you, is sharing your story, telling what you do, being yourself. It can be scary. I'm not saying that it's easy. I don't want you to do everything today, but I want you to start thinking about it. How can I help more people? And when you're creating content, when you're sharing things, even when you're posting on Twitter, if you want to stand out from the noise, you want to build a community, my success comes down to this kind of mantra right here. Nobody will ever tell you you're sharing too much, you're helping them too much, you're providing too much value, you're making their lives better. No one's going to tell you to stop doing that. And so when you think about creating content, when you think about what you're going to actually do, think about your story. Think about, what can I convey that I know? What can I convey that might help one person? Because you never know who that one person is connected to, and that one person can share it with somebody else. I'm so lucky because I tell you what, these 40 presentations that I'm giving this year in 10 different countries, I applied for one speaking gig. And it actually happens in November at Inbound in Boston. Every one of these speaking gigs have become my community. The people that I know have recommended me, that have reached out to people and said, I need to see this guy at my industry event. My success this year on stage, the reason I'm able to travel the world and do what I'm doing, is because for the last 3 years, I've gone out of my way to share what I know, to try my best to help people learn along with me, and ultimately build fans that know who I am, know my pain points, know my struggles, but ultimately they know who Brian Fanzo is every morning he wakes up, who he is when he goes to bed. And because of that, they've rewarded me with the best year journey I could have on stage. So I'm challenging you. Think about it. Think about what you can convey. Think about the story you can tell. Don't worry about which platform you're going to launch. And, I mean, a lot of the questions I get usually off the stage is like, so can you help me pick my Twitter handle? I'm like, damn, you didn't get anything that I was saying up there? Like, the Twitter handle, yes, it's important. And if I had to give a recommendation, I'll do it here. First name, last name. Just don't practice what I preach. It's iSocial fans, because before I realized the power of first name, last name, I built an entire brand around this iSocial fans because I had 8 Twitter accounts. My last name being fans, I had Pittsburgh fans, Steelers fans, poker fans, tech fans, iSocial fans. And I had all these accounts, and I was like, oh, this is cool. And then I realized, like, man, it's a lot of work to switch all these accounts. And I have lots of passions, and I have my niche is just being myself. But for me, understanding like things like that, that's the little stuff. The reason I don't talk about blocking and tackling when it comes to building a YouTube channel or how do you grow your followers on Twitter, guess what? It's all out there for you to learn. I went to YouTube University for almost everything I did because YouTube allows me to understand those little things. What I want you to understand is times have changed. I'm going to leave you with this last kind of saying. My dad, who I said worked at a peanut brittle company, and not a fan of social media, not a single account on social media. Actually, none of my family except for my mom is on social full on. My youngest brother actually works for PSAV, the AV company that's here, so he's on social as well. But one of the things, we were on a live broadcasting show. We were on a show called Social Business Hour that Rachel and I host, and my dad texted me and he said, son, social media will never replace a handshake. And this is my dad. My dad owns a candy business. Still to this day, he consults, and he drives and flies to all kinds of meetings that we could have had on Skype, on FaceTime, on any of the technology that I wish I tried to get him to embrace. But my answer to my dad after I read that online, I said, Dad, you're right. Social media will not replace a handshake. But what social media has done, when you do it right and you invest in it, gives you the opportunity to have more handshakes. Handshakes you would have never had the opportunity to have. And you also have the opportunity to turn some of those handshakes into hugs and even selfies. Because we now live in what I believe the greatest time in the world, that we are not limited by where we live, the people we know. I believe my daughters will grow up never feeling alone, because if they like underwater basket weaving and they like doing it at night, they're going to find somebody online that does that, or cares about it, or maybe does it too, or maybe wants to learn how to do that. So think about it that way. Social media does not replace a handshake. But I promise you, if you guys saw Malia, who was up here on the stage yesterday, Malia and I have been really good friends for the last 18, 19 months. We were both on Meerkat, one of the live streaming apps for the first time. And the hug I got from her yesterday morning was one of the best hugs I've had in a year, because it was our first time meeting offline. And although we've even been at the same events, we just haven't been able to connect like that. And to me, that was not a handshake meeting for the first time. It was the hug. It was proof that investing in your story, investing in your community, can turn that first handshake into a hug. And that's the true game changer. So I challenge you. I hope you guys will embrace it. Tell your story. Share your mission. Start your change yourselves. And think like a fan. Thank you, guys.